Hello everyone, my name is Abdul Rahman and welcome to my first tutorial here in this channel. So, in this video, I will show you a very simple, easy reverb setup for your own virtual orchestra. So first, what is reverb? I'm just searching here what's reverb. So it is an effective whereby the sound produced by an amplifier and amplified musical blah 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 blah. So what is reverb in English? It's actually tricking the ear. Means that we trick the ear into thinking that the sound it's hearing is actually being recorded in a live stage. So this is the purpose of reverb, right? So let's close this down. Now for the reverb, usually every DAW comes with a built-in reverb, but for me I will use my own reverb, which is my favorite is Valhalla Room. It is cheap and efficient and very light on the CPU. And notice that the CPU point is extremely important because I'm going to use several Valhalla rooms. That's why I want to be as light as possible on my CPU. All right. So for the orchestra, we have 5 sections. We have first woodwind and brass, percussion, strings, and finally choir. So we have 5 families. Now let's start with string. If you imagine a scoring stage, string should be up front. It is the first family in the orchestra, the first family that is visible to the audience. It is strings. After strings we have woodwinds. After woodwinds we have brass, and then percussion, and then all the way in the back we have choir. Notice this is very important. That's why I mentioned it, because when you play a brass instrument, it won't sound the same as a string instrument, because brass will have much more reverb in its signal than a string instrument, because it's placed further back than the string. The same goes, for example, the percussion. So if you're playing a timpani or a snare drum, whatever, it will sound more or further back than a brass instrument or a wood instrument or a string instrument. So this is the point. We need to pay good attention for this, because this is how we want to set up our reverb. We will use several reverbs, each for a reverb for each section, to control the distance of these families. So let me open. This is my first. I want to tell you that this is my own personal template. I always use it. So I'll open now the mixing panel. So this is my mixing panel. I have first here the green color. You see it. This is the woodwind family, the brass, the percussion. Notice that I'm going with the standard orchestral sheet, and we have string. And then we have a choir. Okay, good. Now, these are the channel groups, or the buses. Most of you know it as bus. So we have here strings. Now, notice that each of these channel groups have a Valhalla room, right? And before Valhalla room, we have EQ. I will talk about this later. So, for the string, we have Valhalla room. Before we jump inside the plugin, I just want to explain a tiny detail. For the woodwind section, or for any section, sorry, that let's take the first instrument here. Notice that the first instrument in the woods family, it is sending the signal to the woodwind group or bus. It's not sending to the master. Only, see the yellow line over here, it's only sending to the woodwind bus, not the master. And the woodwind will forward that signal to the bus after, of course, applying some reverb to it. So make sure you do that. The same thing goes to brass. The brass, the first instrument in the brass is forwarding the signal, the dry signal, to the brass bus, and from the brass bus to the master bus. Now that we finish this, we move on. Let's jump into the Valhalla settings of the strings. So what do we have here? Just don't pay attention to all these details. I know it's look complicated, a lot of settings, it looks nasty. Just don't deal with it. For me, I just chose the medium hall preset. It is my favorite. I didn't choose. Some of you may go with large hall. I don't want that, because with a lot of tests, I find that the medium hall is the closest thing to a scoring stage sound, and I like this value, which is 1.74 seconds the decay. This value is very good for a scoring stage sound. Okay, so choose the medium hall preset, and it will automatically choose the large chamber, or if it's not, just choose it. So this is the trick here. It's in the mix and the pre-delay settings. Now for the mix, the strings, it should be the driest instruments out of all the families. So the starting point for the mix is 20%. This is my value. You can always start with a higher value. It depends of how much reverb you want on the strings. For me, 20% is excellent. So what does that mean? It means that when the dry signal comes from any string instrument, a violin, a viola, a cello, or a harp, 20% of that dry signal will get reverbed, and the rest will move on to the master as it is, which is dry. Which means that 80% will be dry. It will feed the master bus, and the rest, which is 20%, will be wet, and it will be feeding the master bus as well. So the total will be 100%. So this is the idea. As for the pre-delay, it says that how many milliseconds you want before the reverb kicks in or hits the dry signal. So since the strings are up front, we want them to be reverbed a little bit slower than the rest. So I gave them 30 milliseconds, and don't go higher than this. Maybe 35. Just this is the maximum. Okay, good. Now moving on to the next family, which is which is woodwinds. So I open up woodwind settings. Here I gave it 25%. I could have gave it like maybe 30%, but this is way too much. Like I mentioned, I made a lot of tests, and I feel comfortable with these values. If you want to go higher than this, it's your choice, it's your taste. But for me, an extra 5% is enough. So 25 is good. As for the pre-delay, it needs to be decreased, because the woodwinds their signal will get reverbed much faster than the strings, because they are behind the strings. So I gave them 24. Okay. After the woodwind, we have the brass family, and again, add another extra 5%, so we'll get 30%, which means 30% of the signal that will be coming from that instrument, whether it's a horn, a trumpet, or whatever. It will get 30% of that signal wet, and the rest will be dry. As for the pre-delay, it should be decreased a little more. So I gave them 18 milliseconds. Moving on to the percussion, same idea, 35%, and I gave them here 12 milliseconds. And finally, the choir, which should be all the way back in the stage. This family is the closest thing to the walls of the scoring stage. So I gave them 40% and 8 milliseconds for the pre-delay. So which means that 40% of the signal that is really coming from the choir will get reverb. So that's a big value. You will hear a lot of reverb in the choir, and this is the main idea, because when you listen to any game soundtrack or a movie soundtrack, you always hear that the choirs feel so roomy, so surrounded. So this is the idea. The choir always sounds good when it has a lot of reverb. A lot of room, ambient in it. Okay. So, and that's it. We just finished the settings for all the families. And yeah, that's the point. But remember, I told you that I will explain the idea behind these EQs that I placed before the reverbs. So let's open up one of the EQs here. Notice that what I did here is that I made a low cut over here at 60 hertz, and I copy paste this to all these families, because in this spot here we will get a lot of that, what we call a boomy or a muddy sound, and I don't want that. It's really disturbing for the ear. So I just got rid of that extra boomy unwanted frequencies. I don't want them. So that's why I just cut here at 60 hertz, and I copy paste it to every other family. Same idea over here. Right? So that's the idea over here, and then you can just start tweaking over here depending on the taste. For example, I have a piano already here, so I was just trying to decrease some of the mid frequencies. Just don't pay attention to that. So this is the idea of the EQs before the reverbs. Okay, let's close all these. And I know that you want to hear some samples from each of these sections. Just bear with me. At the end of this video, just make sure to see all my video, the whole video, because at the end I will give you samples of each of these sections, so you can sample it with your ear and see if that sound is the sound that you're looking for. All right, so that's it. So before we jump into the samples, I'm going to play a little arrangement that I made for probably everybody know this beloved anime, which is called Rimi, Nobody's Girl. It's I'm sure that it's a favorite for the 90 kids. So this is my own arrangement, and it is playing using the same reverb settings. And notice that the piano is part of the percussion, so you will hear that the signal will be too much reverb. It will sound way in the back. So I will play this, and you can sample it freely. And at the end of the video, I will play individual instruments from each section, so you can see, hear what the string instrument sounds like, what a brass, what a woodwind instrument sounds like, and even choir. Yeah. And after that, I will put a link to a full composition, a full orchestra playing together, and you will hear that the sound is full. It sounds full and rich and feels like it's been recorded in a live stage. I will put that as well. So I'm going to stop talking right now and play this piece of music. Enjoy.